It's a day late, but it's time to take a look at the 5 things we learned from the Italian Grand Prix. There was lots of interesting things happening this weekend in MotoGP, lots of riders returning from injury, a couple still suffering with some injuries, and that led to some quite interesting storylines. So let's take a look at the weekend as a whole. Ducati Domination. It was Ducati domination this weekend as Ducati took the top 5 positions in the sprint race and the top 4 in the feature, which that probably would have been top 5 had Alex Marquez not crashed. So really, they had an excellent weekend. We were worried at the start of the season that MotoGP would become, well, Moto Ducati, since they do seemingly have the best bike. And we've been lucky that KTM and Aprilia have managed to involve themselves in that battle throughout the race season so far. But this weekend showed that on the days where the KTMs and the Aprilias can't compete, it's going to be a Ducati wash, isn't they're just going to take over the whole grid. And they did an excellent job. They've obviously built a very good bike, but it was a bit of a shame to not see some of the other manufacturers up there fighting for the podiums like we have in previous rounds. Pedros Perfection. MotoGP doesn't really do Grand Slams like Formula 1 does. If you don't know what a Grand Slam is, that's where the pole position sitter gets pole, gets the race win, leads every lap of the race, and gets the fastest lap of the race. MotoGP is a little bit more unpredictable, and so we don't get those really ever happening. But Pecco Bagnaia got pretty damn close this weekend as he dominated from FP2 onwards. The only session he didn't top was FP1 and the warm-up session in the morning before the race, which is pretty amazing. Despite his injury, he just absolutely destroyed the field at home in Italy. So, it was a great weekend from Pecco. Absolute perfection despite his injury, and I mean, it just shows again how good he is and how he is able to make that Ducati work so well underneath him. Post-race celebrations. Something that MotoGP has lost in its recent era of hyper-competitiveness is those Rossi and Marquez, and obviously before that, celebrations. Like Rossi getting pulled over by the police for speeding after the race, or running off into the bathroom was another one. Those kind of classic celebrations, and I've kind of missed them. But this weekend we got to see them again as Pedro Acosta did his Pedro's Pizzeria thing and picked up a pizza warming box and rode the in-lap in with that and handed it to his team, becoming the fastest pizza delivery boy in the world. And Pecco Bagnaia also did one. He had a barbecue and a hot dog in front of his stands trackside, which was really cool to see. It's nice to see these celebrations, and I think they're very important because it's something that's very special to MotoGP. Formula 1 can't do it because the drivers can't really get out of the cars, and so it's great to see them coming back. I know that it means that you're kind of expecting a bit more domination from specific riders, but it is also what builds the rider's character and makes them different from each other. And so it was great to see the return of those post-race celebrations, and I hope we see more in the future. Top speed topped. Alright, we've talked enough about race winners and Pecco Bagnaia and Ducati and how well they're doing. So let's move on to something different, and that was the new top speed record set by Brad Binder, 366.1 kilometers an hour, which is insane. It was a pretty average weekend for KTM, but I'm sure they'll be very happy to achieve that pretty immense top speed. It shows that their bike is really close to Ducati's, and yes, it wasn't the best weekend for them, but they're on the verge of being able to fight there every weekend with what is the fastest bike I think we've ever seen in MotoGP. It's actually quite interesting that it wasn't just Brad Binder who managed to beat the all-time lap record, or the previous all-time lap record held by Jorge Martin, 363.6 kilometers an hour. Enea Bastianini also managed it this weekend. He set a 364.8 kilometer an hour top speed down that immensely long Mugello front straight. These bikes are just getting faster and faster every year in the straight lines, and it's pretty amazing to see. I wouldn't be surprised that by the end of the current rule cycle, we could see these bikes exceeding 375, which is just an immense number to think about, considering they're not designed actually to go as fast as possible. They're not top speed machines, they're track machines. It's just crazy to see how fast they're capable of going. Great to see another record broken. Morbidelli might be safe. Since the start of the season and even into last season, Franco Morbidelli has been fighting for his seat. And so far, you could say it's been kind of mixed, but this weekend shows that he might be getting to the stage of doing just enough to hold on to it. Obviously, there's lots of rumours about Fabio wanting to leave early. He's had a manager or something fired, I can't remember right now, or he's split with him, which is, a possible indication of Fabio looking to move on and get out of his Yamaha contract early. But Franco Morbidelli has been doing a very average job and perhaps doing pretty much what we expect. He's kind of keeping up with Fabio in the past few rounds. He beat Fabio in qualifying this weekend. He beat him in the feature race. He was thoroughly beaten by Fabio in the sprint, but, they didn't collect points, so it doesn't really matter. Franco might end up holding on to his seat here, and Yamaha might be looking on the other side of the garage for a replacement for Fabio, depending on how things work out. There's lots of interesting storylines developing there, and we'll see how it all plays out. Rider of the weekend. I try not to do this too often, but sometimes you just have to. Pecco Bagnaia has to be the rider of the weekend. He's injured, and he won both races, pole position, fastest laps, and only didn't top 2 sessions this weekend. So that's just a pretty incredible run. And it has to be said, he did just the most amazing job really possible. So Pecco Bagnaia is my rider of the weekend. Struggle of the weekend. Maverick Vinales is my struggle of the weekend just because he was beaten by his injured teammate. I expected a little bit more from him, I guess. He did do okay in Mugello last year. He made up a lot of places last year. And so from his starting position, I'd hoped he would progress forwards a little bit. And he just kind of ended up finishing the same place that he started. So, struggle of the weekend, Maverick Vinales. Alright, on to my predictions. My predictions, I only got one right this weekend. My first prediction was that we'd get an all-satellite front row of the grid. We didn't. Both Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez were on the front row. Oh well. My second prediction was that Pecco would win both races. I got that right. It's his home track, or it's his home race. So, kind of expected that to happen. And my last prediction was that Luca Marini would get on the podium in the feature race. He didn't quite manage it. He was so close. Johann Zarco just kind of edged ahead, but he did an amazing job considering that he was injured. All right, that's 5 things that we learned from the Italian Grand Prix. I'll be back for the preview of this weekend's German Grand Prix at the Sachsenring. Very excited for that. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.